Jack, good morning. Thank you ever so much again for joining us. It's a pleasure as always. So this week, as we spoke about a couple of weeks ago, you've had a bit of time now to get stuck into the gym. So I was hoping you would be willing to tell us a little bit about that, your experience, and then we'll kick off for the rest of the episode.
Yeah, mate, it's been absolutely great getting back to it. And I actually took stuff from our last discussion, so the last podcast that we put out on it, and was careful to do things like not just dive back into it like with a new plan straight away. Was like checking out what we had access to, what you can actually use, what the setup was. And it is different. And we've been to a couple gyms actually to see what they're like and what the process is. But yeah, we found a good one, and it's so good getting back to it, man. It's so different just having that like barbell and dumbbell resistance and machines and stuff compared to using bands and random objects at home. Like the muscle engagement and the stimulation feels worlds apart from what it has been. So I've been pumped about it. It's been like, when back when you first started in the gym and every session is something that is like a complete highlight of your day and you really look forward to it. Mate, it's been fully that. I've been loving it lately.
Splitting your sessions up into 3, so you get 3 different.
you can only book in one a day. And one thing that is, again, that I wouldn't have known without going into some of these gyms is different ones are putting different caps on the session times. So if we go in peak times, they limit it to 45 minutes. If you go off peak times, you get 75. And the 45 is quick. By the time you've got in and you've, warmed up a little bit and that, it does go really fast. So yeah, it's not able to get like full big sessions in like you used to. But that's just, that's what programming is for, right? To be able to accommodate for those sorts of things and work things into maybe higher frequency sessions throughout the week because your duration's a little bit lower. And yeah, just been really enjoying the switch up back to it.
I've seen quite a few like different ranges. It's interesting you say that your gym's doing like a peak and off peak time for training, because one of my clients said that they've got a 90-minute slot, and I've not heard of anyone have such a good slot.
That's long.
That yet. That's a good size slot, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
I was speaking to a couple of people last week. They're like, "Can I warm up outside the gym and go in?" I'm like, I don't see a reason why not. I think that's probably a pretty good shout, because I think like you, they are more peak time. These are people who've already gone back to work as well, so they're in the office 9 to 5. It's like, well, my peak time is that hour slot, but it's still quite busy. What do I do? And it's like, well, you can warm up outside, take some bands. You've already got all the equipment. You might as well make the most of it, right?
I think that's a good idea. It's probably something good to quickly mention, that I think it might be a good idea to do some warming up outside, or if you're within proximity to the gym where like normally you'd drive, but you could walk or cycle, maybe doing something like that to get your body warmed up before you go. Because I've also seen some people, sprinting in there for their 45 minutes. First thing they're doing is chucking 20 kilos either side of a barbell and starting to do RDLs or something. And I'm watching, wincing, just waiting for that hamstring to snap. Like, if you've not gone in and done some form of getting your body warm, maybe some form of like specific work, I just feel like there's going to be some injuries before people have even started in the gym again. So something like that, warming up outside, I think is a good call. It's a good idea.
I think what you said, especially there about, utilizing that space between work and gym, is really effective.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people, this is something I never really understood about certain classes, is, I have nothing against classes, so to speak, but if you think about how some of them work, like if you sit in an office all day, then you sit in a car to get there, and then you get there and sit on a bike, for example, you've not had any time really on your feet. So it would be effective if you, most of the time, I get really I laugh at this when I'm in traffic. I look at bikes going past me. I just think, you're so smug right now, aren't you? Because you're going to get to where we're both going quicker than I am.
Yeah.
And you're arguably warmer than I am as well. So, this is the best time to be investing in that kind of walking space. And, we both listen to podcasts. Perfect time. If you're walking out of work, get into a different headspace, maybe listen to some music, but get in there and feeling much warmer and raring to go, as opposed to doing what you said, in that you kind of get there, slap some plates on either side and go, here we go. Completely defines the object of what we were saying last time about, taking it easy now so that you get that ramp step up, as opposed to getting in the gym and snap city.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've definitely been doing that as well. Starting pretty low and still feeling a massive effect in terms of muscle engagement, soreness, etc., just from having a lot of reduced volume and reduced sets compared to what we used to get to.
Absolutely.
What about you, man? You've not been diving back into the gym, but you have been diving into the sea.
Diving into the sea floor. Yeah, so we, as I said, we went away for a couple of days last week, and it was really nice. It really was good. A few small wins for me. I mean, I think we might have mentioned this before on the podcast if you guys listened to some of the earlier ones, but I've had far too many knee surgeries now. So when I can do something which involves knee instability and it wins for me, then that's a huge thing. So we managed to go surfing. The first day, I'm pretty sure I dented the sea floor. Obviously, I've got a pretty big head, so I'm not sure who came off worse. But I was doing so well. I stood up and I was like, oh, when you get that minute of like, well, not even a minute, like a split second of pure cockiness of like, yeah. And I was obviously too far forward on the board, and the nose of the board went down, and I just headbutted the sea floor. The best part of this was that as I stood up, I got the board in the back of the head.
Oh, mate, you get a double whammy with that.
Honestly, I stood up and I was like, oh.
It's so disorientating as well. You're like, where am I? What's happened? You don't know which way you're facing, which way the sea is, which way the sky is.
You know what happens next, don't you? Another wave.
Yeah. And even though you're only buried for like 5 seconds, it feels like 10 minutes.
Oh, absolutely. And it's just like, then you try to get back up and you're like, oh, well, this is what concussion feels like. Getting smacked by another wave. It's like, I actually said to Katie, this surfing business is the perfect analogy for life. You spend most of your time trying to get up. Then the kind of minute you do, you feel great about it, but you wouldn't have got up if you hadn't have spent most of the time in the sea or face planting beforehand. Yeah. So I felt like it was a pretty good analogy. You only spend like 5 minutes at the top for all the work you put in to get there.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously every now and again you get a seafloor to the face. So,
Were you nailing it by the end of your trip?
I wouldn't say I was any kind of surfing pro, no, but I mean, I did stand up a few times, and I didn't do any more damage to the sea floor, which I think is considered a success.
Mm-hmm.
But we actually, tell you what we did do. So that the first day we went, it was really quite busy. There was loads of people, like, I was going to say in the way. They were obviously doing their own thing. And it was, heaving. So it wasn't that enjoyable. So what we did the next day, because we camped, tents are interesting, aren't they? We camped. The sun obviously came up really early, and we all woke up really early. So we were like, screw it, let's go. So we were in the sea by like 8 o'clock, I think. It was really quite early. Sun had obviously was up, just kind of over the hill. It was really quite picturesque, actually. But there was nobody in the water. It was only like the really keen surfers that were down there, and then us idiots on bodyboards and these huge foam things. So, yeah, that was really quite tranquil, very nice. I'm sure the surfers were enjoying it a lot more before we turned up. But sea's free, right? Okay, so we have a cool topic today, actually. I was just saying to you off air there that we get a lot of questions from coaches asking how we do stuff, why we do stuff, and not just in a coaching sense, but also in a business sense. And of course, that is a massive part of being a coach, being an online coach, especially being a PT. Obviously, you have a lot of gyms and things will direct clients a bit more your way. But of course, we don't have that luxury as such online. So, I thought, what, we put it up yesterday, see what people say, and we got loads of response. So I think it'd be cool to dig into some of these questions, especially with you, and see what you've got to say, really. And hopefully we can help some people out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, let's dive in.
So first question, how important do you think the entrepreneurial side of coaching is compared to the coaching skills?
I think it's equally as important if you're going to run it as an online business. I think the kind of barrier to entry is being a good coach, is having those coaching skills. It's almost like the baseline requirement, because you see some people on the other end of the spectrum that might have a large following, or they might have an ability to market themselves and use Facebook ads well, etc. But if they're not good as a coach, then those people should not be coaching. If they don't have the experience, if they don't have the knowledge, they don't have the qualifications. And equally, you can't be all the other way. It doesn't matter if you're a great coach, but then you have no entrepreneurial skills to get out there and be able to actually coach people and give people that knowledge. So I think it's equally just as important. And that doesn't mean that you have to become a business expert or go and do a business degree or anything. But I think you have to be putting and allocating a good chunk of time every single week to some form of business development. And really something that you and I have spoken about a lot in the past, like streamlining systems and reducing friction when it comes to systems. Ultimately, you want to get people through to being your clients. You want to get people through to coaching. And so the more that you can streamline the back end, streamline the admin side of things, the better it's then going to be for getting people into your ecosystem and getting to do that good coaching work that you want to do with them.
That's a great point. I think, as we've spoken about before as well, you want to spend the most of your time doing the thing that you actually want to be doing as well. Mm-hmm. So, as you said, onboarding people in a smooth and effective manner to get them to be your client is very efficient. It should be very efficient, because that way you get to do the thing that you really want to do. And obviously, if you have 100 people or so coming through a form every month, you don't want to spend half an hour, emailing 100 people, because that's all your time down the drain. Whereas you want to be as efficient in that process as you can, so you can spend that other time looking after those clients and looking after those people. I think as well, on that note of kind of being a good coach / being entrepreneurial, I think we spoke about this in some kind of detail in the first podcast we ever did, didn't we, with Lauren? Where we spoke about the importance of actually, being a trustworthy person in terms of your ability to coach and look after these people, and that then tying into having more clients. But also, if you don't sell yourself in an effective manner, then you're not going to be at full capacity. Which brings me on to the next question. And we actually had quite a few questions on this. And that was, how do you know how many clients you can actually coach? Or how do you know what the limit is for how many people you can coach is?
It's going to be down to your coaching style, how much time you put into each person, how much time you need for each person. There's not going to be a set amount for everyone, but there will be a rough average. It will fall somewhere around the mean. Some people are going to take up more time, some will take up less, but you need to look at your schedule and how many hours you can dedicate to those clients across a week, and then decide how you're going to split that up. So like for us, for example, we do all of our check-ins on Mondays and Tuesdays. We don't have them spread throughout 7 days of the week. Yes, you might be able to take on more clients if you did that, but that means for scheduling, you're then not going to be able to have days where you build out everyone's new plans and new blocks, or you're not going to be able to do that business development work, like we said earlier, or do marketing and Instagram and podcasts, etc. So, look at just what are the kind of hours you can allocate to clients realistically. And there's going to be some level of trial and error. The beautiful thing about not having many clients when you start is that you kind of ramp up into that. And you will get to a point where you start to realize that you're having to compromise on something. And it may be that, you're just running out of hours in the week, or you feel like you're not able to spend the time you want to spend on plans. You'll know when you've got too many and when the workload is just too much for your time. But what I will really underscore is, don't let that paralyze you. That's a very high level worry. People ask me this question before they've even got clients. Or I've had people be like, oh, I just don't know how to deal with really high-end competitor clients. I'm like, well, who do you work with at the moment? They're like, oh, no one, I'm a PT in a gym. And I'm like, then why are you stopping yourself from even starting worrying about working with champion competitors? Worry about that stuff when you get to it. So when it comes to having too many clients, you'll figure that out when you get there. And I think you'll know when you've got too many. And at that point, it's not just a case of saying, right, I've got too many, I have to stop, full stop. You may look to offer group type coaching or small groups with, multiple people at once, or doing some form of guide, or partnering up with other coaches or employees. There's a lot of ways around it. But you'll know when those hours become too much, and just think about how you can efficiently block your time throughout the week. I think that's something that we've always been really keen on. So doing things like having those check-in days, having those days where you build out plans, because there is a big cost to like task switching. If you go from like, I'm going to do a check-in, once I finish that check-in, I'm going to change that person's plan, and then I'm going to email it back to them. Then I'm going to jump back into another person's check-in. You're kind of switching between different systems, different parts of the brain in terms of like communication, and then like analytical, and then going through like a creative phase to build out that plan and come up with stuff. And you're just going to end up knackered. I think it's better to like dive into all those check-ins in one, then have another day when you dive into all those new work blocks, those new workout blocks for people, and really look at batching things effectively across the week and making the most of your time, and then worry about that stuff down the line.
It's safe and probably fair to say that we've both had a point at some point where we've probably had, I know this is true for me, too many clients, but that's only based on my capacity to coach those people in the way that I want to coach them.
Yeah, that's key.
It is, absolutely. And I just wanted to kind of compound on that from what you said. It's impossible almost to say you can have 20 clients, you can have 30 or 40 or 50 clients, because fundamentally your coaching style and what people need from you based on the people that you coach is going to be very different.
Mm-hmm.
If you are someone who really invests in their clients, who takes time to learn about their lives in a different way to maybe just looking at their training and nutrition, emotionally that can be quite tough. And so, if you had 50 people who were giving you all their kind of intricacies in life, and especially at the moment, with COVID being a huge thing, with lots of stressful things going on in the world for a multitude of different people,
Mm-hmm.
If you really invest in them, then you take all that on board as well. It's very hard to take on a massive amount of people and not drop the ball. And of course, that's a key point. You want to be able to treat every client like they're your only one, if you want to have a service which has longevity. But that's just kind of my shout on that.
Then also it depends on the service, right? And I think you have to just work backwards from, so you might start with something like a target income for a lot of people. I might want to leave my current job and be able to do this full time. Well, then what is that monthly amount that you need to make that's going to allow you to go and do that? If we say, just as a generic number, that's $5,000 a month for someone, then you can get that by having 5 clients that pay $1,000 or having 50 clients that pay 100. Which way are you going to do that? And then you have to mold your service accordingly. So if you've got, those 5 really high-end ticket clients, you better be helping them with absolutely everything. You better be giving them a ton of time. You better be really investing in like the onboarding of those people and the whole process. And that's why you have less, but you can charge more per person. Whereas if you're going to then say, right, I want to go for volume and I want to have 50 clients that are doing 100, how are you then going to deal with those people? How are you then going to make that service more efficient? And how are you also going to be honest with them and tell them what they're getting? Tell them that, no, I'm not going to be doing this, and this thing for you, that, and that thing. This is the service. This is what I'm able to provide, because it's matched to the amount of time that you're putting into that person. I see people being like, oh, I'll write customized nutrition plans for you for $19.99 or something. And I'm like, you're either paying yourself £1.50 an hour, or you're not customizing these. And like, call a spade a spade. Like, if you're just going to give someone a nutrition plan that is kind of copy and pasted over or whatever, there's ways you can still market that, and you can market it as being a cheap, convenient, easy option, instead of trying to make it look like a high-end option, but not charging a lot of money for it. People see right through that. So always make sure that you're being honest with what it is you're providing, and work it around the money, work it around the time that's going to go into it. There's not a right or wrong answer that we can tell you. Like you said, Xander, we can't say have 10 or have 50. It's not about that. It's just about what service you're going to provide for those people, and how does that fit into your work hours, and also how does it fit into your life around that. Because when we've had too many clients, our client experience doesn't suffer, but our lives do, for me and you. So we end up not having evenings, not having weekends, not having social lives, and not giving our partners enough personal time. And, we kind of take on that load in a different sort of way. And you have to know, actually, I've got to be able to stop at 6, 7 o'clock on a Friday. I've got to be able to not work one full day on the weekends, or whatever that is for you. You also have to bear in mind how you want your life to look around coaching as well, and not just how many people can I possibly fit into a week to make the most money possible.
Okay, that leads perfectly into the next point then. How to be confident with your service and prices that you're charging?
Yeah, I think I've already covered most of that. It's
Yeah.
knowing it's worth what you're putting into it, and being honest and communicating that with people. We tell people that they get customized plans according to their needs and their desires and their access to equipment, because they genuinely do. Every time we change a plan for someone, we're asking them, what did you like in the last one? What didn't you like in the last one? Is there anything new you want to come in? What access to equipment do you have? We changed everything over when people went at home, when they're going back to a gym, and we're confident in that because we know that we're doing it. And if someone comes to us and says, hey, this plan's great, but actually I've now got a shoulder injury, we're going to overhaul all of their shoulder work for them. And so you feel confident in charging the amount you charge and providing that service. I think you're only going to have discrepancies there if you're trying to pull a bit of a fast one on people and pull the wool over their eyes and say that they're actually going to get something that they're not, or you're promising things that you actually can't fulfill. And once you've worked out what it is you're going to provide for people and then what that's worth, be confident in taking that to market, and soon the market will tell you as well. If you're getting 0 clients and really poor feedback, something's got to change. If you're getting so many clients for your current service that you can't handle them, then you can probably put your prices up and you're still going to have enough for a pool of clients to be able to pull from. But I think that's something that you learn actually by going into that industry and trying it and finding out with people. And again, too many people get paralyzed before they've even started, of like, oh, I just don't know what to charge, or I don't know how many people I can handle, or, what I should do about XYZ, when they've actually not even fully started yet. So let the market tell you, I think, is a huge component of it.
Yeah, to add to that as well, I'd say that the environment and kind of geographical area you coach in is a big part. So if you're a PT, for example, a lot of these people who have asked questions are coming from a kind of PT point of view. Look at the area you're coaching in. Have a look. What can people afford in your area? If you're working in the centre of London, for example, then the chances are you can probably pump your prices up a fair bit. Inner city prices, etc. If you're working out in a more low socioeconomic area, then charging £50 an hour, where in an area where people's gym membership is $7.99 a month, is not going to be an effective model, at least not to start with. So something that I really disagreed with when I first went through my coaching courses and stuff, they were like, set the price that you're worth to. But the truth is, you can only set the price that you think you're worth if you're in an area that can afford that kind of price. And as well, if you set your price that high to start with, you're going to get a lot less experience because you're going to have a lot less clients come through. So if you're working in a gym, for example, I'd say, set your prices to something like you said, how much do I want to earn realistically for my first few months, and be realistic with that in saying that, it's going to be a bit of a grind. It's going to be a time where I am actually putting in more time than I'm getting paid for, but that's okay because it'll pay dividend in the future. And then saying, well, okay, well, if I charge a little less, I can get more clients in, I get more experience. And then when I'm super busy, I can then climb my prices up as I go.
Mm-hmm. Whereas
I've seen people and worked alongside people who've gone like straight in at the top and then gone, I'm really struggling to get clients. And then they have to do loads of offers, like, buy one session, get one free kind of thing. And in that case, you're kind of degrading your service because, as we've discussed before, it's very different having a product. Like if you go to Marks and Spencer's or Tesco's and you buy some Jaffa cakes, and Jaffa cakes are buy one, get one free, they can pump these Jaffa cakes out like there's no tomorrow, right? Because they just go through a machine. It's a product. But if you're a service, you can't just pump out more of your service. And as we, said, and you rightly just said, the thing that allows you to do that is us giving up more of our free time and eating into our private time or our weekend. And that's not something I believe you want to do, because if you can't look after yourself and have free time for yourself and appreciate the kind of loved ones in your life, then it makes you very, very hard. It makes the job very hard to then go and do that with loads of people when you're just a little bit knackered, to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, next point. Let's go to, what are the best methods to market yourself?
If you're I mean, if you're talking online, it's got to be social media. I do think there's a lot of noise right now on Instagram, and I think you have to be creative about finding ways to stand out and do something a bit different. We've always been keen to not just be talking about the same stuff that everyone else is, and if anything, trying to find counterpoints to those types of things and almost be polarizing in some ways. I think it helps to actually have things that you stand for, be willing to call out things that are incorrect and put a stand down, because otherwise you can end up just kind of fading into the crowd of what everyone's speaking about. So I think when it comes to social media, find that area that you want to focus on, find those people you want to speak to, and don't be afraid to create enemies outside of that. Like, we get comments from time to time, you get angry DMs, you get people that don't agree with what you say. And that's fine, because your work's not for those people and you're not going to want to coach those people. You're not going to be everyone's cup of tea. And I think it's important that it then attracts the people that you do want to work with and that do kind of connect with your message. They're the people that are going to become raving fans and go on to tell their friends and family and followers about you as well. I think there's a big push at the moment towards podcasts and YouTube as well. A lot of people have an Instagram and have a lot of followers on Instagram. Not a lot of people have a lot of attention coming their way on things like YouTube comparatively. I think people get a lot more invested in you once they've kind of seen you on camera and heard you speak on podcasts, etc. And there's a big push as well to like passive audio, and just, we always listen to podcasts like when I'm getting ready in the morning, when you're in the car, when you're cycling somewhere, whatever it is. We're busy now, and so if you can get in people's ears whilst they're doing stuff, I think that's effective. And a huge one, I think, that is massively underrated, and one that we've used huge amounts, is doing an absolutely cracking job with current clients, because they're going to be your biggest fans. They're going to be the people that talk to other people about you, that refer people on. And the best marketing that you can have is someone that you trust come to you and say, hey, I think you should get on board with this person. And you'll do that in every other area of your life. If you're looking for anything, a restaurant, a doctor's, any service, any product, that you go and look at reviews online, or you ask friends that have got the same thing, or, you see this piece of audio equipment that a friend's got in their house and they're waxing poetic about how great it is. And you're like, man, I really want one of those things now. You've got to be that thing for your clients. So other people, when they go and see that person, they're like, you're looking great, or you're doing really well in the gym, the first thing they talk about is you. And that is only going to help promote you. And it may seem like a small kind of one-to-one kind of promotion rather than putting loads out on Instagram. But I think it's more important to get quality leads and get the right sort of people in, rather than just trying to spray out to hundreds of thousands of people and that not really result in much. We've always been really keen, and I've always hammered home to you that it's about, the end outcome is about getting more clients and helping more people. It's not about having more followers. It's not about getting more likes. It's not about getting more listens. It's about how many of those people are actually converting to people that we want to work with. That's the number one goal. And what about you? Because I think you've got a lot more experience with in-person. You took in-person PT a lot further than I did. So what would you say for in-person PT?
I wouldn't say a lot different, to be honest, because to kind of round up your points into one word, I would say it's trust. Mm-hmm. It's, that's why it's so important to have people who shout about how much they enjoy your coaching or they enjoy your time. And that's why, because they, if they are doing that, they are showing other people that they trust you. Because if people put something on social media or on a review that says, hey, this guy's really good, he turns up on time every session, prices are reasonable, I feel like he really listens to me, all of this good stuff, and then, their friend buys a package with you, you're late to your first session, you don't have anything organized, you're kind of bimbling around the gym, you're on your phone, and all of that stuff, then you've completely made a fool of the person who stood out for you and said they're very good. So a bit like what you said a bit earlier, in that you want people to see the value in what you're doing, you have to give them that value in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
So in terms of being in a position where you've got people face to face as opposed to being online, I don't think it's an awful lot different. I think that the thing you have to realize if you're PTing in a gym is that Instagram won't necessarily get you very far.
Mm-hmm.
If you're online, it's imperative, or social media in general is imperative, of course. But one thing I did is put a lot of eggs into a basket, which realistically wasn't going to bring me much return. I back then I tried to do a lot of stuff for Instagram, a lot of stuff for a website. But the truth is, the people saw what I did in the gym. And my top 3 points for anyone who's just about to start training or is maybe new to coaching is learn the names of as many people in the gym as you can.
Yeah.
That is fundamental. If you can say to someone, "Hey Jack, how was your session today?" And they're like, "Oh shit, you remember my name? Cool." They will feel like a real member of that gym. They will feel like you took time to listen to them. And you could say, "Oh, how was your arm workout yesterday?" And they're like, "Oh, like he came over yesterday and he obviously remembered that."
Mm-hmm.
Start with 5 people. Start with 5 people a week. And if I was to call you on a Friday and say, "Hey, how many names have you learned this week?" Okay, well, I've named these 5 names. What do they do? Oh, well, this person works here, this person works here, this person works here. Okay, and what's their main training goals? And that you can tell me those things. The likelihood is you've listened really well.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not doing it in a creepy sales way, like, "Oh, I offer this." It's just going to learn their names. Because as we spoke about before, either A, they come up to you and go, "Actually, do you know what? I think I could do with your help." Or you've gained a friend. So every time you walk in the gym, you can say hello. And they might, a friend of theirs might say, "I really need a PT." So actually, I don't need one at the moment, but XYZ in the gym is really friendly. They seem to know what they're talking about. I picked up the majority of my clients like that. I think, maybe they would say, "Oh, I've seen them elsewhere." But that's my first point, learn some names. My second point is when you come to actually onboarding these people, really work hard at how you interview them. Because when people, I've seen a lot of it, client coach introductions happen. And a lot of the time it's like, "Yeah, like these are my prices. This is what I do." I never, ever, ever made a client sign up to a session in a meeting. So when I did their introduction, it was like, "Okay, we'll meet up for half an hour chat, no pressure whatsoever. You don't have to sign up at the end of it. All it is a conversation between you and I to discuss how I think I can help you, where your weaknesses lie at the moment, and what we can do to address those. And then I want you to go away from that. I want you to think about whether you want to invest your time and money in this process, and then we'll move from there." And, I'd have people at the end of the session like, "Cool, can I sign up?" I was like, "You can, and I'm happy to coach you, but we're not going to do that here. If you want to do this, we can have a little email back and forth and we'll set everything up there." Because to me, I feel like as an individual, and I think we've had a conversation similar to this before, it can be quite awkward. And I don't want someone else to feel awkward in that conversation where I'm just trying to help them. I'm just trying to see what they want to get out of this process and see if I can actually help them. So, I'm not saying that's the right approach for everyone. And some people might want to, get that client in the bag at the end of the session. That's absolutely fine. But for me, I found that in that half an hour conversation, I would, talk to listen. So I would say a question or I'd ask a question and I would listen intently. And then I would pick up little points in their answer and ask them questions on that, because I want them to feel like that half an hour is all about them. It's all about what your problems are, because that's what their sessions are. Especially as a PT, it's about listening to people. And a lot of the time people will come in and have a good rant about something or their partner or their work. And if you can't listen to them in that half an hour, they're going to be less likely to want to train with you for a whole hour if you just sit there on your phone.
Mm-hmm.
And that leads me perfectly onto my third point. Your coaching, and a lot like our online coaching has to be 100% about them. So give these people everything you have. Coaching online is different to coaching in person, agreed, but the same principles apply. If you are emailing someone or you're voice noting someone and you are intent on picking up facts that they've discussed with you, in the gym, you're saying, "Oh, how did your granddaughter get on at school last week?" Because they told you that they were starting school last week. That stuff really matters to people. And it's not about being weird and, when they write something down, getting your phone out and writing it down. It's just about wanting to be with these people for that hour, and they will appreciate that. But it's also about having skills to get them to where they want to be and having that hard conversation of, "Look, the reason you didn't lose any weight this past 2 weeks is because of X, Y, and Z. What we're going to do about that? Well, this is what I suggest we do. Can you do that? No? Well, here's what we could do. So I guess they'd be my like main 3 points, and everything, in my opinion, folds around that. But as you said rightly, you know, if you don't do a good job, then being an entrepreneur won't get you anywhere. But if you do a good job and you have no entrepreneurial skills in terms of organization, business, then you're going to max out pretty quickly. You'll start dropping the ball with people, and in the end, likely get a bad reputation. So, you know, you have to level up both of those things at the same time.
Something that a guy, do you know Nick Mitchell? He owns Ultimate Performance in London.
UP, yeah.
Yeah, they're a private gym. I think they do only kind of personal training type clients, and maybe not. Maybe it's semi-private, but I know he's got a fantastically successful, you know, multinational personal training business now. And something that he said that, I mean, this must have been close to a decade ago, back when I was just starting out in gyms, that really stuck with me, was that every time you're on the gym floor, it's a performance and everyone is watching. And I think that's really important to remember, that don't drop the ball with being sloppy. Don't think that people aren't listening. They are. Like, people are watching. People see you walking around in that uniform, and people are picking up on what you're saying and what you're doing and how you're acting. And even if that person directly isn't going to end up working with you, like you said, Xander, they might have a friend, they might have a parent, they might have an auntie, they might have someone who wants to get personal training. And the only way that they're going to get referred on to you is if people see you actively doing a good job. I'll give a bad example from the last couple of days, actually, of us going into, so we've joined a new gym since Corona, and there were 2 guys that were working there who were, one was working out, he was off shift, the other guy was working on shift. They spent the entire time chatting to each other. So loads of the disinfectants weren't getting refilled. There were like tables with nothing on them. None of the weights were getting put back in like certain areas, and they weren't doing anything about it. People were not wiping stuff down. He wasn't going over and saying anything, all because he was just engrossed in this conversation with this other guy. And to make it even worse, he was actively bitching about a load of other colleagues, like out loud. There was no music on either because their music system was broken. And he was saying, this person, I carry them, and I do this for that person. And I was listening, and I was just thinking, I don't care if you came in and told me that I could be British world champion bodybuilder by 6 months under your guidance. I would not come near you with a 10-foot barge pole. Like, if you're saying that to your colleague and you're bitching about people and you're being as sloppy as that, I just think the level of professionalism was terrible. And to anyone else who was maybe thinking about getting personal training with that person or engaging with those people at the gym, it's going to rub them up the wrong way, is the simple way to put it. And when you get that feeling of like, something's not right about this person, that's something I don't want to engage with, there's very little chance that you're then going to pay a fair amount of money to access their time and to spend time with them. Absolutely. So remember that people are watching, people are listening. You know, that guy doesn't know that I think that about him. You know, he would have left that session not thinking anything of that and not really realizing that people were around listening. But both myself and the wife walked out and were like, what was that? You know, like, how could he be doing that? And he's lost, you know, any potential custom going forwards from those people. So really think about who's listening and who's watching, because it's probably more than you think.
That you touched on something at the start there, actually, which I would have said was my other key point, actually, if I had a fourth one. And that is, go and talk to people who you wouldn't normally talk to, because we are always going to go, you know, Jack, if I saw you in the gym, obviously not working out at that specific moment, but I might be inclined to come and speak to you if I was working, because we look in you know, we train in a similar way. We will align on a lot of things by the training methods I can see that you use, you know, and I think, you know, this guy looks like someone I want to speak to, someone I'd want to be involved with, you know, and that's all good. But the chances are, if you meet people who are like-minded in that situation, they probably don't need your help. What you do need to do is, you know, for example, a lot of my clients when I worked in the gym were a lot older than me. So we had a lot of university staff and then people who had, you know, full-time jobs, etc. I would never have met these people if I didn't go and speak to them in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
And the only way you get involved in these people is by stepping out of your comfort zone and saying, do you know what, today I'm not going to go and stand by a squat rack because that's something I'm comfortable with coaching and I know a lot about that. I'm going to go and stand between some treadmills. I'm going to go and speak to some people who are a bit out of my comfort zone and see if I can talk to them a little about why they're on a treadmill and what they want to get out of it, and see if I can recommend them anything different.
Yeah, and they're the
And
ones that need your help. You coming up to me trying to explain your training methods, I'm just going to be like, yeah, I agree, mate.
yeah,
We might have a good conversation, but it's not going to get you anywhere in terms of getting a client or something. And we used to see that in the gym that both you and I have been members of before, to not be too identifying, but how certain groups, say like, weightlifters would all just crowd around in a group and kind of spend time together, and people who would personal train those types of people or be involved with coaching those types of people would stick around those types of people. And that's fine if you want to have a chat. It's fine if you want to have a nice conversation, but I'm then not going to feel comfortable kind of breaching that whole group and going
yeah,
up to a dozen people and saying, hey guys, can I learn about this Olympic weightlifting thing? Whereas if they were coming around the gym and like you said, chatting to people and trying to work out what they might want to get out of it, it might pique my interest and say, actually, you know what, I think that is something I'd like to give a crack. Could you show me that? Could you do a technique session with me? Could you do a mobility session with me? But you're never going to be able to infiltrate those people if you're just spending time with your group and not branching out.
yeah. And the other thing you said, which I thought was really interesting, is when you mentioned about every time you're on the gym floor is a performance. Every time you tell someone something, imagine, for want of a better word, you're in a courtroom and you're going to have to defend what you've just said to a group of people, because just like you, this was actually passed on to me by a very trustworthy source. And they said to me, Xander, you'll never believe what I heard in the gym today. And I was like, well, I probably won't, but I'll try. He said, so a person in the gym had PT. He said the PT did exactly the same thing with all three of the clients he was in there. This is an endurance athlete, so he spends like 3.5 hours in the gym. He did every session exactly the same, regardless of gender, regardless of body weight, regardless of anything really, exactly the same thing, he said. And on the last client, he said, the guy came in, he said he'd been in and he'd already done a good warm-up. He said, to be fair, it looked very good. He said the guy was very, very overweight, but he was trying very hard. And he started talking to his PT, and the PT said, okay, how was your diet this week? And he said to him, look, I'm not going to lie to you. I ate far too much. I had a few too many Terry's chocolate oranges. I had a Chinese and a chippy on the Friday. And he said, okay, and how are your weigh-ins going? And the guy said to him, I'm not going to lie to you. I have not lost any weight this week. And to be honest with you, I'm not really sure why. Now, to anyone, you would know why that most likely is. And the PT turned around to him and he said, so you did this, and he basically repeated what he'd said. You had too many chocolate oranges, you had a Chinese, and you had a chippy on the Friday. He said, to be honest with you, mate, I think it's a bit of a mystery because I'm not sure either. And I was told this, and I was like, are you serious? And the guy who told me this, as I said, I trust him a lot. He said, yeah. He said, couldn't believe it. He said, the guy was so disinterested in helping this person that he just went, yeah, I don't know. So if you were stood in a court of people and somebody asked you, hey, look, this is what I've eaten over the weekend, and the chances are they're in a big surplus thanks to that, and they've, gained weight or not lost weight, what would you stand up and say? You'd say, well, the reason for that is X, Y, and Z. This is what we're going to do about it. And I think that is true of anything. Whenever I do a voice note or whenever I do something, I think if somebody shared this around the internet, would I be willing to stand in front of a microphone and back up what I've just said?
And I think some people aren't, maybe like that PT perhaps, because he almost doesn't want to go down that rabbit hole.
Yeah.
Like he doesn't want to, he thinks it's almost like kind of beyond what they're doing in that session. But that's also potentially then a good chance to upsell. And it doesn't mean that you have to do it right there and then. You're not going to get into that conversation, but you could say, look, I give them a bit of a kind of preview to what you believe it is. You could explain it and say, around the nutritional coaching, this is what I'm thinking. Hey, how about we grab 5 minutes after this session and just have a chat about that? Let's put it away in the locker for now and get this session done. But when we're done, let's have 5 minutes and chat about that. And then you can speak to that person. You might then be able to do some sort of nutritional work with them outside of the personal training work that you do, or write them some sort of one-off plan, whatever it is. Maybe write them a document to give them some education and charge them like a one-off, consultancy type fee for that. But it's an opportunity. It doesn't mean that you have to give people loads of extra information for free, but that also doesn't mean that you should just brush it under the carpet and kind of pretend it doesn't exist. Use that as a chance to, as I say, potentially upsell. And like Xander said with his example of not kind of talking fees with people in that initial consultation, maybe have a kind of set time when you'll go to that person, you'll discuss that and you'll kind of work out the details. But make sure that if you have the ability to help them and a direct way that you can, you're actually doing them a disservice by not offering them that and not giving them some sort of paid option to do it. It's not a bad thing to do. It's not a salesy thing to do. Like, you're actually reaching out to help them more, and it would actually be a worse thing to not offer them that.
Okay, 3 points that make a good coach.
Number one is absolutely communication at all times with everyone. So not only just the client, but also potentially key people around that client. If they're getting any sort of physio treatment, really knowing what's going on there. Anything they've got going on medically with doctors, making sure that you're kind of CC'd in, even if not directly, you're kind of getting the information passed on to you and taking that information in. Communication would be my number one. Would you also agree on that?
Yep.
It's always hard to put things into like top 3 type lists. I know I'm going to stop this podcast later and remember like 10 perfect things that I should have said.
Send me some audios to add in.
Yeah. The communication, it's having a empathetic approach, but also knowing when to kind of put the hammer down. I think the kind of contradiction of those things, like being able to hold those two potentially competing things, is really important, and being able to hear people, understand and hold that space for them, but know when actually you're just enabling rather than helping them with something, and knowing when to be able to push them and what that person can take. And through the communication, that's how you're going to know what they can or can't take. We'll speak to different clients completely differently and approach them differently in different situations. And that's because we know them and we understand them. We've taken that time to listen to them. And as a third one, I would say a great coach is kind of forged through experience, and you're only going to get better with time. Expecting to be great just out of the gate is not going to work, and you're only going to disappoint yourself and your clients. So be honest about the fact that you're learning certain things. I remember when I first started out coaching, I had a lot of instances where I'd say to people, I'm reading this in your check-in right now. I'm hearing what you're saying. I'm understanding it. What I'm actually going to do is do 10 or 15 minutes research after I get off this check-in. I'm going to send you an email follow-up and I'll let you know, because I'm not fully confident giving you a good answer on that right now. Or I might be willing to say, I understand you're coming to me for help with this injury or whatever thing, but you need to go and see a physiotherapist. That's not my specialty. And being willing to refer people on, just having that experience and knowing when you're actually speaking out of line and when you're not able to help someone with something, I think is really important. And you only learn that with time and with working with a lot of different people. So be willing to always learn from different clients and different scenarios, build up that experience over time, and always know when you're overstepping your pay grade.
I have nothing to add to that. I agree fully with those points. And, fundamentally, if you stick to those 3 things and build on them as you go, you can't really go wrong, and you'll carry those skills forward into any job you do as well. It's not just those things apply just here in this zone, but they all apply across many. Knowing how to speak to people, knowing how to address certain situations. And that's something I've definitely improved on over the past few years, is actually learning when, do you know what, I'm going to have to give this person a little bit of a different talk today, because actually I am enabling a situation which is only getting worse. I've tried the nicer attempt, and now it's time to, as you said, drop the voice a few octaves and dig in a little bit. And that's a difficult thing to do, because when you've coached someone for 2-3 years, they're a good friend of yours, and you've got to turn around and be like, this shit's not acceptable now. Obviously, maybe not in that sense, but to be able to say to someone that you really appreciate and like, that can be difficult. But also, fundamentally, you have to remember, as you said earlier, that you will be doing them a disservice if you don't do that. It's not that you're a horrible person or that you don't care. In fact, I usually label myself in that. And when I do have those difficult conversations, I do like to say, please appreciate that I respect you a whole lot. I really do value you as a client. And that's the reason I'm saying these things. It's not that I don't care. If I didn't care, I wouldn't be saying them. And I want to do the best to serve you. But sometimes we have to look at these situations as they are and call them out. And I hope that you can appreciate that and think that I'm not being insensitive. And I think that definitely does help.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's almost like kind of rooting it in love and coming from a place of respect and appreciation, like you say. And once you come from that framing and you know that you're doing this to benefit that person, you're doing it to help them, you're doing it to further them and better them, then you've got a different tone, you've got a different approach to it, you've got different solutions, rather than just saying, hey, you messed up and this is a problem. I'm always saying to clients, this doesn't mean that you're wrong. This doesn't mean that you're bad. This doesn't mean that you're, absolutely doomed to forever go down the wrong route. It's just, what I would recommend is, if you're experiencing XYZ, maybe we should actually try ABC, and framing it to them in a way of helping them, which is fundamentally what it's all about. Never getting into that kind of slang match of like, who's right, who's wrong. I think some coaches can be always trying to show clients that they're right, because that makes them clever and that makes them valuable and useful. But actually, it's about putting ideas out there and helping that person and coming to it in a mutually agreed way, because the way that someone's going to get buy-in is through them also agreeing to it. Like when you're a kid, if someone just says to you, do this, you're like, why? No, I don't want to. Whereas if they show you how they're doing it and they show you what those positive outcomes are going to be of it, and they kind of coax you around to it and you get on board with it as well, you feel like you've made that decision and you're like, yeah, I am going to do that thing because I'm on board with it as well and I'm invested. And that's where you've got to get your clients to.
Absolutely. Next question. What would be the 3 things you'd advise somebody to have in place before moving their business online?
So, good back-end systems for supplying people with training plans, with nutrition plans. Good onboarding systems to get people over, into your client base from the initial engagement with you, whether that's through social media or referral, etc. And experience of working online with people, either for free or for very cheap. Whether that is a family member, a friend, even though it may seem weird working with someone like that online, I think it really does make a difference, because online is absolutely different to in-person PT. And I first started out coaching my brother-in-law, for example, and I still say to him to this day, I'm like, I'm so glad you let me make all those fuck ups and all those mistakes, and I got them out with you for free, and still got him decent results. And, we still had a good time doing it and everything. But I would be embarrassed to do some of the things that I did with him with people online. So get out all of those little initial niggles, all of those things that you're unsure about with people that it doesn't matter with as much. Otherwise, you're going to be putting, I think, way too much pressure on yourself with paying clients.
Yeah, I think as well, because obviously I made quite a big swap from in-person to online. One thing you may struggle with is getting people to see the value of your time online versus in person. This is a hiccup I found. It's saying, if your prices are going to be the same, they're like, well, hang on a minute. Previously, I had an hour of you with me. Now I get you just all the time, but not necessarily in the gym with me. How does this work? And something that you want to bridge that gap with is, as Jack, you rightly just said, is show them. And that can be, hey, look, you know what? We'll carry on with our current situation. I'll carry on PTing you, but I want to show you what online coaching can do. So How about, we join the services together. We coach you a little bit online and a little bit in person. And this is actually a bit of a service I tried to run as like a hybrid of saying, well, look, I still want you to do check-ins and things like that. I still want you to do all of this, but I'm still going to coach you in person 2-3 times a week as I normally do. But I will also do you a check-in. And then eventually these people are like, do you know what? I actually know exactly what I'm doing in the gym. How much is this service if I go to it full time? And I was like, well, the pricing's roughly the same, et cetera, et cetera. Per hour, so not necessarily per week, obviously, if you're training someone 3 times a week, but then they start to see the value of what you can deliver them when they're not with you, and then they can see more flexibility because you don't have to be there. So if, for example, they're caught up in a meeting, they can't make their PT session, instead of cancelling and losing their money for it, they can just go whenever they want because they don't have that. So you have to work hard to show them exactly why it's better, not just because you want to do something different. You can't say, well, I want to do stuff online now. Come and join me. It's what value are you going to give those people in your changeover? Mm-hmm. And if you can show them that value first up, that makes them think, oh yeah, well, I can see why this would work, then you've really got to back it up. Then you've got to go balls to the wall with showing them that it does work. And if you don't have the backroom systems, as Jack said, you're going to struggle to do that, because when hiccups start happening and you don't have something to back that up or to answer that point or question, then you're going to struggle. Next cue, we have, a bit linked to the last one. How do you know when it's appropriate to go online?
I think it depends on, do you want to or not, is a big first question. Do you actually want to move your services online? Because it's a very different lifestyle to working with people in person. If you have a demand for it, then you might start to move online in that case. And then it may be a case of transitioning things over or running things as a hybrid, like Xander said, with doing some in-person work, some online work. And I don't think there's a good answer for this. I think it's fully up to the person. It's up to the individual. What I don't think it's a good idea to do is say, oh, I want to do online now, having never done any online, and go, right, I'm going to quit my PT job and just get clients online and expect 30 people to turn up and pay you a full-time income. I don't think that there's just going to be some magic moment that you can make the jump. It doesn't work like that. I was fortunate to be starting, I say fortunate, I mean, you could look at it one of two ways, to be starting my business whilst I was in university. And so I was full-time university, getting student loans and that sort of thing. So, I didn't have to dive into it being a full-time income. I knew that by the time I graduated, I wanted it to be equivalent to a full-time income. So I didn't have to go into a grad job, and I achieved that. But it was building it up over that time whilst I was in university, working crazy hours, doing things that I didn't necessarily want to do because I knew that I wanted to get to that stage. So for you in a current job, are you going to run it on evenings and weekends and build things up in the background until you can get to that level? And then you have to decide the point when you can make that jump and make the transition over, if you want to, again, because it is a very different world online compared to doing it in person.
I agree. And I actually did this. I used to take off a Tuesday afternoon. So I PT'd all the way through the week, all the hours I was given to do so. And I took off a Tuesday afternoon to start with. So I said I'd do all my check-ins on a Tuesday afternoon. I would recommend that you don't choose your busiest day. So Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays were always my busiest days, purely because I had a lot of clients who I trained Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays. The last thing I wanted to do was upset that system, which was very effective, by going, oh, I'm no longer working on a Wednesday. Mm-hmm. So what I did is I took a Tuesday afternoon off, which was my quieter time, naturally, and also worked well with check-ins and things. And I did, as Jack said, did some freebies to start with. Again, leading back to the point I made earlier, don't go pricing yourself through the roof, because you won't gain experience. And that is fundamental in doing a good job here. Mm-hmm. And then when that starts to build out, say, okay, look, guys, I'm afraid I'm not PTing at all on a Tuesday now. I'm going to do all my online coaching on a Tuesday. And then it just kind of, one tapers down, one comes up. And hopefully the aim is that your revenue and your income either maintains, because you never give up one thing without the other. If not, improves, because you obviously have more capacity for more people. Mm-hmm. Okay, how do you get more clients that are clients that you specifically want to work with?
By meeting those people where they're at and marketing directly to those people. So if you want to work with competitors, for example, then you better be putting out content around competing, around training people for competitions, around off-season work, in-season work. And you better be mixing in those circles and trying to get into those communities. There's no point in kind of making your information general and kind of targeted to everyone if you want to work with a certain specific population. With being online, you've got the ability to drill down to a certain niche because you can then work with that niche all over the world. So, if you're just working in a gym somewhere in Devon, for example, chances are there's not going to be a group of 30, 50 competitors that you can all work with in that gym. Whereas if you want 30 to 50 competitive clients that you can spread all around the world, there's a very high chance that you can get that. So really make sure that you do drill down into there, put out information surrounding that is directly targeting that community, and don't spend a whole lot of time worrying about what else comes in. Like we said earlier, with kind of being a little bit polarizing on certain topics, etc. Make sure that you are speaking to those people and you are kind of changing your message accordingly for that audience. Don't try and think that you have to please everyone and just hopefully some competitors will come your way because they see you're doing good work. You have to speak their language, be a part of their groups, and be someone that they trust with the information.
How much education do you need to be certified to give people health advice? I'm going to redirect that to being a PT because obviously health advice is a big grey area, unless you want to tackle that.
I mean, in general, the honest answer is unfortunately very little.
Yeah.
To get your standard level 2 and level 3 gym instructor and personal trainer qualifications, I'd safely say anyone could do it. If you read the books, you do your revision. It's not that it's super easy, especially if you don't have like a PE or exercise science type background or anything. But it's very straightforward. It's like a driving test or something. Here's what you've got to do. Here's all the work you have to go and study to go and do it, and go away and do your weekend courses or whatever. And at the end of that, you get your certification. Now, that's just the minimum amount to kind of get officially certified. How much education you need to actually do a good job with people is a whole nother question, I think.
Yeah, I agree. The entry level and actual monitoring of skill sets of people in the industry is very low. And in fact, the monitoring of skill sets is nothing. We're not regulated by anyone, right? We don't have a governing body or board that says you must do X, Y, Z per year and we're going to keep an eye on what you do and say. But I do think that if you want to do well, it's, we spoke about this before. It's not a career that you can just go, oh, hey, look, they charge £50 an hour. I'm going to go and be a PT. The only way you get the least to do that, or the right almost to do that, is if you build up such a good reputation, and a reputation comes from being able to answer people's questions, and or, as you said earlier, hey, look, I don't know right now, but give me 20 minutes and I'll find out. Mm-hmm. And that's a really important thing. It's perfectly okay to say you don't know. And if you let your ego get in the way and you make something up, you could do someone some harm. Mm-hmm. And you certainly don't want to do that if you want a good reputation. And on the same level as that, I would say to anybody who's starting out, this is something that I did, was whenever I had a client who had something new that I was unsure about, I would do a load of research and I'd keep it in a little folder. And so in my little folder, I had some information on a bunch of different things, even down to the simpler things like eczema and asthma and things like that. I've got qualifications in like medical PTing, which isn't even that much more difficult. It's a 5-day course. So I guess, they cover a lot more things in that. But even in saying that, it's still about going out and doing your own research, about going and doing your own background information. And I actually said to a client the other day who came to me with a medical condition, which I've seen many, many times, but I haven't dealt with one for probably a year. So I said to her, look, thank you very much for making me aware of this. I have a lot of information on it and I do know a lot about it, but just to be sure, give me a day. I'm going to go away. I'm going to pick up my notes from the past and I'm going to get some more reading done in the meantime. And I'll let you know if anything's changed, because the last thing I want to do is pick up the notes I wrote a year ago when a load of new research has come out and give her the wrong message.
Yeah. I guess that ties into the last question, right? And what was said before about like, you know, how do you find the people you want to work with or whatever? It also depends what education level you then get. You know, if you want to work specifically with a certain group of people, you have to be an expert in that area, and you have to dive really deep into that to be able to serve that group and provide, like you said, answers to questions and be able to understand the research and go deep with those people. You know, it's always going to be personal to who are those people that you want to serve and what it is that you can bring them.
Absolutely. As a lasting, or as a last question, as a leaving question, then this one is a pretty broad question, but I think it serves very nicely as a final one for us. For any new PT or coach, what is the one mistake that you made and the one thing you would advise that they do? So one mistake that we made and one thing we would advise that they do or don't do.
One mistake that I made would be not communicating clearly enough with clients about me and my feelings towards something. Like we said earlier, sometimes you have to have difficult conversations with people, and sometimes you have to maybe admit when you don't know or whatever else. And I wasn't really confident enough to do that early on because you feel like you have to have all the answers. And that's why we're really kind of hammering that point home for people about how important that is when you do start out. People will respect you a lot more if you're just willing to say, I don't know, or actually, hey, if you're going to come back to me every single week, you know, not having fulfilled everything that we agreed and not having communicated with me all week about that, this coaching relationship isn't going to work. You know, if you're not willing to have those conversations, people aren't going to respect you. And I think I messed that up early on. And I let relationships get to breaking points with certain clients because I wasn't willing to kind of pull them up on stuff. And it ends up just kind of imploding and sabotaging the whole thing. And then, yeah, just being willing to admit when you don't know and when you're wrong. And sometimes that can just end up being a little bit awkward if you're trying to like fumble an answer to something when really you just should have said, you know, like you said, give me a day and I'll come back to you. What's your one?
My one would be, I touched on one earlier and it was similar to what you've just said there. So I'll think of another one. But I would say that my biggest weakness was a fear of feeling stupid. And this is something I still have to an extent. And it's something I've worked very, very hard to try and not feel. But when somebody would challenge me, so for example, I'd say, hey, look, this is what we're going to do. This is why we will do it. And they'll say, well, you know, I've heard this. And I'd be like, oh, is that right? Or is that? And I really doubt myself and what I knew about that subject to the point where it would make me feel stupid and I'd feel terrible about that. And I think, oh God, like, why is this person paying me this much for this? I don't even know the bloody answer. And it would take me 10 minutes to be like, I absolutely do know the answer. And I can answer that question 50 times over. But I used to get so worried that when somebody challenged me on something, that it meant they thought I was stupid, therefore they were challenging me on it, that it really hindered my confidence and ability to actually educate people in a way that I knew I could. And working on that meant that now when people challenge me on things, which I think is bloody brilliant, by the way, if any of my clients are listening to this, like, go for it. It's great. Don't feel like you're going to upset me now I've said that. But the thing that I would do now is, and I've worked very hard to try and iron this out, is actually see it as a really positive thing. Because this person is showing interest in the area. They're challenging me because they have a question related to what I've just said, not because they think I'm stupid. And what I then need to do is try and explain to them the level of knowledge that I have on this subject. And maybe if they have a separate area of knowledge, so say I've read XYZ books or papers on something and they've seen something in a magazine which has been really well written. And I'm not saying that it's always wrong, but sometimes people who write in magazines write really convincing arguments for why fat burners work, for example, or why Tanya from XYZ lost 50 kilos across 3 months by doing X diet. And they can write them in such compelling and kind of drawing language that, you know, when I'm told this by clients, I think, well, I can see why you think that. And I can understand from your perspective how that has really drawn you in and how what I've said now seems like it's wrong. You know, when I've said, look, we're going to try and lose XYZ pounds per month for the next 3 months. And they're saying, well, hang on a minute, this woman's just lost 50 kilos in that time. Like, why can't I do that? And it's now a thing for me where I'm like, great, I'm really happy that you've gone out of your way and you've looked into this. Let's get on the same page. Let's sit at the same side of the table and let's work through this together so that you and I are both seeing through the same lens. Because I feel that when I felt like I was stupid, I wouldn't share that extra piece of knowledge, which would have helped me get on the same side as them. And then, as you say, then relationships start to break down because I'm kind of scared to share that knowledge, which would have been the icing on the cake for their trust and them to be more comfortable with the process.
Mm-hmm. And that being willing to just kind of ask or just talk about it, I think is really important and is actually a win-win when you don't know something, because you get to learn something. And so if you're actually building your identity of being around someone who improves and who learns more and who gets better, it's a chance for you to do that. So happy days, if you can ask someone, absolutely, could you expand on what you mean by that? I'm not sure I'm following. What is that you're saying? Or, asking someone to go further into something. And also for the relationship, people love that. People love they love feeling like they're teaching you something. They love feeling like they're sharing something that you didn't know. And so not only does it not make you look stupid, it actually makes you look smart and betters that relationship, because you look like someone who's willing to learn and they're getting to explain it to you. Like for us, we're going through the process of buying a new house at the moment. And when going around there the other day, we were getting shown around and the agent was using some sort of term of he was calling it like the snicking process or something. And I didn't know what he meant. I didn't know what he was saying. And the wife was just kind of nodding along and going, yeah, okay. And, but I thought, I was like, am I just stupid? Do I not know this? Like, should I know what this means or whatever? And then I thought, fuck it. I was like, what is that? Can you explain that? And straight away, he's like, yeah, what it actually is we're going to do X, Y, Z, and this will happen and that will happen. And he starts explaining it and it opens up this whole other arm of conversation. And then we've both got questions that are bouncing back and forth about stuff. And everything gets better because you're willing to actually ask that and, potentially put your neck out there and admit that you don't know something. But actually it makes the whole interaction better. So always be willing to do that with clients.
And as a client, I had this happen a couple of weeks ago. Somebody emailed me saying, look, I don't think we're meeting eye to eye on this at the moment. Can we have a chat? And I said, absolutely. Mm-hmm. I'll send you a Zoom invite. What time do you want to do it? Let's have this out. Let's have a conversation, because actually it was the best bloody thing I ever did. And, it's simply that sometimes via email, and for those of you looking to go online, you have to be very careful with this. And I do implore you to use voice notes with new clients, especially because they can get a sense of the tone of voice. Mm-hmm. Whereas if you email them, like I know that when we email people, it's very kind of informal. The language we would use is very much more like, I don't know what the word would be, like vibey, if you like.
Conversational.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's not slang, but it's more like I write how I talk. Mm-hmm. So if you've heard me talk, you're going to read my email in that language. And so we don't have this issue where you're kind of like, oh God, this guy hates me, but you've just not heard me speak yet. So you wouldn't have understood necessarily that. And this client, we jumped on a Zoom call. We've had a couple of calls now just to try and get on the same wavelength. And actually we are on exactly the same wavelength. It's never been a problem with that. All it has simply been is that sometimes with the language that I use to describe certain situations and with the kind of miscommunication on research, whereas they've read this and I've read this, they felt like I might have been contradicting it. And, us having that conversation was like, hey, look, I'm not contradicting anything here. I'm just trying to explain that this is why I would do that. And they're like, I understand now. Mm-hmm. I see where we've gone wrong here. And then you build from the ground back up. And it's been fantastic ever since. So from a coaching perspective, take the opportunity to invest time in people with questions. And from a client perspective, take the time to ask them.
Sure. What was the last part of that question as well? That was a two-parter.
It was, what was the one piece of advice you would give? So it was the one mistake and what piece of advice?
I would say be client focused and client first. Really lead with that. And if you're leading with that and always being in the mindset of helping clients, helping people, and helping to steer them to where their goal is, you can't go far wrong. There was an analogy I heard on a podcast a long time ago I don't actually know if it's true, but it's a good analogy regardless. And that was that the origin of the word coach comes from the term stagecoach. So stagecoaches used to pick people up and take them to where they need to be. And a coach does the same thing. You meet them where they're at and you take them to where they need to get to. And if you're always doing it with that framing, everything else we've been speaking about when it comes to communication, when it comes to admitting when you don't know something, when it comes to treating people in every single way like we've spoken about, that will come if you're keeping that the main thing, if you're keeping that as the main focus.
You stole mine. But instead of being boring and just saying that, I am going to firstly agree. I think, as I said earlier, if you aren't client focused, you're going to struggle to build trust and you're going to struggle to keep a good, consistent client base. I'm going to say enjoy yourself, because as much as we've spoken about being there for your clients and doing things for them, fundamentally, if you don't have a good time doing this, if it doesn't get your balls tingling, then you're not going to do it for very long. And it can be a tough job. It can be, with the stress of COVID, we've had people losing jobs. We've had people losing family members. It's not a light-hearted process to invest yourself in. But I promise you that if you do invest yourself in it, and you do invest yourself in it with a full heart for the people you are coaching, you will get so much out of it. But just all I would say is enjoy the road, enjoy the process, enjoy learning stuff, enjoy meeting new people from different cultures. And fundamentally, take everything you can from it, because as I said, there are some tough times. And if you don't enjoy the general process of it, those tough times will wreck you. They've pushed me to edges at times, especially when, really close clients of mine have lost family members, and they've kind of poured their hearts out, which I think is nice that they trust me with that, but it can hit you as well. And, if you've still got 8 check-ins to do that day, or 7 check-ins, or whatever it is, you got to pick yourself back up and be like, look, I helped this person, as sad as this is. I've helped this person, hopefully, and now I've got to do that for a few more people today. And if you, as I said, if you don't enjoy that first hit in early on in the day, can really finish you off quite hard.
Mm-hmm. And I think enjoy it and be human first is the key stuff. And that's going to trickle over to clients as well, how they engage with you, how they feel towards you. And they'll sense it if you're enjoying it and you're being human oriented before anything else. And they'll also feel it if you're trying to be too formal, too transactional, too salesy or whatever. Again, as you get that experience, you'll kind of feel into that space a lot more. But yeah, I think that's a good place to tie it up and really underscore that for new coaches.
100%. We really do hope you guys have got a lot out of this. If you have any questions, as always, Jack and I are always open for DM, so do fire them away. And, as always, it's great to have new coaches coming in. And yeah, enjoy it. As Jack said, be human and enjoy the rest of your day. Take care, guys. We're going to be adding in a Q&A to the podcast in a few weeks' time. And to do that, we're going to need some questions from you guys. So do go over to our team Instagram page at JLX Coaching on Instagram, of course, and click the link in the bio, and it'll take you to a quick Google form where you can fill in any of the questions you've got, and we will get to those in the podcast to come. As for coaching, you can also check the link in our Instagram bio for that, or go to the website, which is at the moment jacklenton.com, and you will see the links to coaching there. Have a good day.